So this now takes us to do a recap because we have to look at different move. So that fianchetto idea there just doesn't work. Make sure you also watch the other videos before you watch this one, because I basically go through all possible ideas and you should always know what to do basically. So c5, bishop e3, we're looking at variation when they take, bishop takes, bishop e7, bishop d3, castle, queen e2. And now instead of b6, a6. That's what we're going to be looking at. Yeah, so b5 is the idea potentially, also because, you know, we're going to be castling alongside, and in fact we will. Okay, so bishop d7 now. Let's look at this idea. Bishop to c2. And you know the idea. So let's say, for example, b5 already loses because we got this thematic pattern. Bishop takes, and now queen to d3. Threatens to win the bishop for free and to checkmate in h7, so our opponent will have to give up material. So in this position, let's not look at b5, let's look at queen to a5. Looks like a much more natural move in this position, you know, going for this pawn. But still, this is a loose bishop, this bishop in d7, so you're just going to take this knight. So that doesn't work. Because take, and now here after rook takes, there is absolutely nothing. Queen takes in a2, you might think there's a counterattack, but instead, you just play queen e4, looks for mate. This queen here is not threatening anything, you just retreat the bishop, you got nothing to worry. g6, okay, queen to a4 should solidify the advantage, because now we're forcing a swap. So let's do another recap, and I'm gonna show you this other move, which is the strongest possible move in that position. And it's also a move that I've encountered myself in a FIDE tournament recently, and that's also one of the reasons why I wanted to make this video, this in particular. So c5, bishop e3, and now queen to c7 instead of capturing. This is to put more defense over the square c5, because we remember this idea, you have the intention of taking in c5. It's a free pawn, you can support it with b4 eventually. It's also supported by the bishop, and you're going to have a massive majority against those two pawns. So obviously our opponent can't allow that. So here what you do is knight to e5. Okay, bishop to d6 now, and you can already tell we've taken the initiative, because now bishop b5 check, and our opponent will have to move the king. What if, let's say, if they block with the bishop? That's really bad, because you can win the bishop early. Knight takes, and after knight takes back, you can take this pawn. The knight is pinned. The queen shouldn't take because it's protected by the bishop, so our opponent will have to take with the bishop, or simply retreat, because the thing is that this knight is pinned and there's attack of the queen as well. So after swapping everything, queen takes, then you can take a piece, you're up a piece. So our opponent will have to move the bishop instead of taking the pawn in c5. But that means that we will eventually play b4, and we're super comfortable to play this massive majority 4 against 2. So in this position, after the check, even knight d7 doesn't make much difference, because simply take. Bishop takes, take. Obviously king takes would be a suicide, because you take the pawn in c5, the bishop is pinned here and you win a piece. So our opponent, we can assume, will take this, will take our bishop. So we can assume our opponent in this position will take with the queen. But then still, you take here. And again, you're completely winning endgame for this reason. So in this position, after the check, what if king to f8? Does this save the bishop pair and the game for our opponent, especially considering that there's double pressure on this knight? Well, okay, you play knight c4 with an attack on that bishop. And obviously, if you get to take this bishop, you will also be able to take the pawn in c5, because it's defended by this bishop. So if the bishop retreats to e7 in order not to be taken, still, you finally take this pawn, right? That's one of the crucial points that we need to focus on when we play against the Rubinstein. Okay, bishop takes back, and that's game over, because check, and we win a piece. Queen can't really take back, because that will allow us to infiltrate our queen, and that's also game over. Oh, by the way, in this position, as soon as the knight went to c4 with an attack on the bishop, you may wonder, okay, what if our opponent just first takes this pawn? So that no longer having to worry about the whole, you know, capturing c5, supporting it, blah, 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 and just play a normal game. Okay, take back. And now after bishop e7, looks like this is going to be one of those very safe games for the black player when you got the king in f8, which is actually safe. Now here you just return to e5. Okay, well, let's look at this move. King to g8, the idea of manually castle, as in like something like h6, king goes to h7, and then the rook gets the play. Queen f3 is a very strong move now, and now this puts pressure on f7, meaning our opponent now cannot just, I don't know, develop this bishop, because after the trades and the knight moves, then you're gonna have access. So well, basically you can take with the bishop, right? And then the knight moves, and you're gonna have access to f7, the queen and the knight. And so a move like h6 now doesn't work because of the stunning bishop to e8 move. Winning this pawn will be fantastic, and it's now inevitable. And if instead of h6 our opponent in this position plays a6 and say, like, you know, get rid of this bishop because this bishop is really annoying, that's also the best move. Bishop a4, and now b5 can't really happen. You know, you're attacking this rook, so the pawn is pinned. So after rook to b8, again bishop e8 just gives too much advantage. Also because after knight f7 we should be able to trap that rook and win it. This leads us to another recap where we will go through something else, and then we will close this video. So take, knight d7, knight f6, knight f3, knight f6, take, c3, c5, bishop e3. We're looking at queen c7 idea. It's the best move. Okay, so knight e5, and now before our opponent gives us the initiative that we saw before, what if a6, stopping the whole bishop e5 very strong move? Okay, you make a check like this, queen a4 check, and there's no good way to stop it. If black blocks with the bishop d7, then you win the bishop pair. Oh, I don't need to mention that b5 doesn't work here because the rook is hanging, so you will be taking this pawn with check. The pawn can't take back because the queen is attacking that rook, so that's completely winning. So bishop d7, take. Obviously we're not going to go through queen takes, because after all the swaps, queen takes. Okay, you might argue that there's going to be enough defense over the square c5. Okay, so the best move here, if black takes with the queen, take. Obviously taking with the king is stupid, and it allows the attack on the c5. So black takes with the knight and defends the pawn c5 further, but now castle. And we're just finishing the game with the bishop pair. So let's say black takes. Okay, take, and our opponent can't really develop the bishop here without allowing us to reach the diagonal with the pawn. So let's look at this idea which we haven't seen. Castle long. Now before we go through this type of endgame, like, I'm going to cut the line here because I'm going to show another line which ends very similarly. So that will give us an excuse to go back to this type of scenario and grasp some last ideas before I close the video. So in this position, after the check, so we said bishop blocks. Okay, we take, knight takes, bishop e2, bishop e7, developing castle long, castle. And now we take this pawn. So that actually loses because black can't take back the bishop because rook takes knight for free. Here, not even the knight can't take back with an attack on the queen because queen to f4. And you can say, okay, this is a completely fine endgame. Okay, well, queen takes or not. Whatever the queen moves, it's going to be very dangerous, and the opponent pieces are very misplaced. So queen takes, bishop takes, rook a to c8, and it's a very similar scenario as before, right? We have the lead. King c2 is the best move here. It's obviously because you know that black is going to play b5 with the idea of going b4. So you just play a3 now. It's all super safe. Rook f to d8. There's absolutely nothing here. You just want the computer is very happy to trade everything. And here the best move is rook to d1. This is supposed to be a much more comfortable endgame to win for white with the bishop pair and a majority that can start pushing. So obviously try to favor all the trades after winning the bishop pair. And in this position, let's make a mention that queen a4 check. If black blocks it with the knight, that's very passive. But you may say, okay, maybe then that will allow the black player to retain the bishop pair. Here, this allows us to play bishop e5, finalizing the attack over that piece in d7. Again, taking means that you're dropping this rook. And allowing us to trade everything means that we're going to win the pawn in c5 and end the game as well. So let's look at this variation that we haven't seen. I mean, this type of idea, f6. Here now, no time to mess around anymore. You just take, and take. Absolutely no compensation. So you get the point. Okay, let's make two very brief mentions to the other lines, but they're not as important because everybody will have to play c5 at that point. Let me clarify here. Knight f3, knight f6, take, and then c3. they'll have to play c5. Every other variation is weaker. Let's make an example. Bishop to d6 without playing c5 allows us to simply keep this very strong pawn chain in the center. Okay, bishop d3, castle, queen e2, usual moves. And now let's look at this. b6 with the idea of fianchettoing. Okay, bishop to g5. And it's not something that our opponent could do, like let's say instead of b6 play h6 to stop bishop g5, because you're still going to be playing bishop c2, and the plan does change. I mean, you're going to play bishop c2, but then you're going to play rook to g1 and then g4 g5, and you are going to dismantle these pawns. So let's look at b6 as we were looking already. Bishop g5. If h6 now, you want to keep this pin. Bishop h4. It's a very strong pin. g5, bishop g3. Okay, no longer pinned. But we've created a weakness that we wanted. Okay, bishop b7 comes now. It looks like this is going to be a normal game for our opponent. But now knight e5. Don't worry about this pawn here, because then rook g1. Bishop goes back. We lost the pawn. However, h4 is completely deadly. I mean, there's no coming back here. Taking and allowing all the swaps means we're going to be soon on an open file against this king. Our king is actually very safe. Not taking means we're going to take anyway. So in this position, what if instead of h6 and trying to get rid of the pin, our opponent just keeps developing? Okay, well, castle long, bishop e7. Let's look at this idea. So a black doesn't expose his own king. King b1. Knight to d5. How do we make this idea? We've probably seen this position a lot. Okay, h4. This is crucial because our rook is on this file. So obviously if they take, then we can take back with the pawn and we're completely winning. h6 now attacking the bishop. Ignore it, because all you want is to open this file. So you play c4, attacking that knight. Knight to b4. Removing. Okay, bishop e4. Threatening to swap with that very strong fianchetted bishop. No good moves now except bishop takes. Check, queen takes, and now a5, trying to counterattack on the king side. a3, get rid of the knight. Too annoying. Knight c6 is impossible because the queen, so knight a6, g4, and this bishop has been hanging for quite some time now. But we don't care, because the moment it happens, we take back this rook and this queen will be cooperating to victory. Queen to d6, best moves now. What is our opponent going to do? Okay, bishop f4, attacking the queen. The queen has to move. e5 doesn't make sense. Queen to d7. And now g5. And it's happening no matter what. The dismantling of the opponent king side. So one more mention before we close this video is the early bishop e7 move. But I'm just going to try and show some ideas that haven't been shown at all, with some patterns that you haven't seen. So c3 and now bishop e7 early on. A truly boring variation for players that hate chess. But you know what you gotta do about it. Bishop d3. Castle. Bishop f4. The idea basically is that since our opponent has not decided to challenge our bishop, not challenging the d4 square with the c5 move, or not playing bishop d6, then in that case bishop f4 is a perfectly fine move to play. c5 now, for instance, what you do, you take. Bishop takes, queen e2 comes now. And now playing bishop back to d6 to challenge this strong bishop is not good, because our opponent has been wasting quite a few tempos, as you notice. Bishop g3 comes, and you're gonna castle long. This bishop can never really take this without losing a very, very strong, without allowing us a very, very strong rook on the h7, putting pressure on the h file. So let's look at this idea which we haven't seen. So here in this position, instead of bishop back to d6, knight e5, attack the bishop. Okay, bishop e5. And f6 now will be a positional mistake. But it's an idea that has to be seen. f6, okay, bishop g3, e5. We haven't looked at this. Okay, well, rook to d1. You might wonder, why not castle long? Well, we don't really... You see, when this bishop in g3 is not in a perspective of being swapped with the opponent bishop that will open the file for the rook, then in that case we just want to castle short side, because this bishop is there to stay forever. I mean, who's going to challenge this bishop? Here position is already completely winning for white. Black's best move according to the engine is bishop to e6, putting more defense over the knight because we're about to pin it. White goes on with queen e4, threatening mate. f5 is not possible because the pawn in e5 will be unsupported, so g6, but now bishop to c4 here, and you know, it will be finalizing the attack. The knight remains pinned. Last mention in this position is after queen e2, knight to d5. We said bishop to e5, f6 is not really good. So what happens if the knight, let's say, goes back? Okay, castle long. Now we're threatening bishop h7, winning the game. So let's look at this idea, queen to b6, putting more pressure over f2. Okay, we take the knight, pawn takes back, the opponent king is now more exposed, and we go on with the stunning knight to e5 move. This is a beautiful move. The knight is excellently placed, and we're threatening queen h5 type of idea, attacking h7. The knight's a very good friend of the queen over there. A pawn cannot really take the knight, because then another sacrifice, bishop check. King takes, check of the queen. The king will have to move, let's say king to g5. Our opponent dreams to play something like rook g8 and king f8, but none of this is going to happen, it's just too late. Queen g5 check, king moves, rook d3 should end the game.